How's it going, my bakers? Hope you're having a nice day so far. Welcome back to another episode. Today I'll show you how to restore and take care of your cast iron pan. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. Cast iron pans like this one come pre-seasoned from the factory. The seasoning is a coating of oil that is baked onto the surface of the pan. It protects the iron from rusting and it makes the pan non-stick. But as the pan is being used, the seasoning can wear off, especially if it's not cared for properly. I only use my pan for bread making purposes, which does not damage it that much, but it gets abused from time to time, especially when I use the pan as a steam generator. It's when I preheat the pan in the oven and then pour boiling water in it to create a cloud of steam. That really wears off the seasoning. It's safe to say that my pan has seen better days, but it's definitely not as bad as it looks. I've owned this pan for several years and I've baked with it countless times. This was the first time I actually had to refinish it. This is only a little bit of surface rust. This can even happen if you wash your pan, if you scrub it off and don't dry it properly, or if you place it down on a wet surface and leave it there for a while. It's just normal wear at the end of the day. But even if your pan is a lot rustier than mine, you'll be able to restore it following the steps I break down in this video. Within just a couple of hours, your pan may just look brand new again. So let's get right to it. First, we'll look at some of the things required for this project. Before we start seasoning the pan, we need to wash it properly. And to make our job easier, to lubricate the process, we'll need some dishwashing soap. Now when your pan is fully seasoned and you use it day to day, you should not use dishwashing soap too much because it wears off the coating. But since we have to refinish it anyway, we can safely use it. Next up, we'll need something to scrub with. A hard sponge or a scourer like this one will work great, but even better still will be one of these metal scrubbers. Both of them will do the job. The metal one will definitely be more efficient. But the hard sponge also has its advantages. You can use its straight edges to get into less accessible areas. Now again, if you're just using your pan and washing it day by day, I would suggest using the sponge instead of the metal scourer. It'll be a bit more gentle to the surface. Some hot water and a sponge will manage the job of general washing most of the time. Next, we'll need some kitchen roll. This will be used not only for drying the pan off, but will also be used for applying the oil. You could use a lint-free linen towel, but then you would have to sacrifice a towel. I think kitchen roll is the better option. It will dry the surface more effectively and you don't need to wash it. And again, this is another thing that you would use day by day when you use your pan. After washing it, make sure you dry it off properly so it doesn't rust. And kitchen roll is a great tool for this job. But there is an alternative, an even better option. And that is placing your pan in a hot oven to dry off. It requires no effort and there's no wastage. After drying the pan, we'll need to apply the oil. Many oils can be used for seasoning cast iron. Rice bran oil, soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, canola, grapeseed oil, vegetable oil, olive oil, coconut oil. Some of them, like coconut oil and olive oil, will leave a flavor behind. And the peanut oil that I'm going to use is going to leave an allergen. So if you're going to cook for other people, do not use peanut oil, just in case. Besides vegetable oils, animal fats can also be used. But you should only use those if you use your pan regularly. Because if you store it for longer periods, the animal fat may become rancid. When it comes to the oil of your choice, it is the same story as with the previous items that we discussed. You're going to use this as a maintenance item. After cooking in your pan, you'll wash your pan, you dry it off, and then you rub it with some oil, just to protect it. And even better still, if you use your pan for cooking, then some of the oil that you cook with will also get baked onto the surface and protect it even more. Right, a couple more things before we start. We're going to place the pan in the oven on a rack upside down, and we'll place the tray underneath it just in case. It will be there for catching any drips. We are going to wipe the pan completely dry before we bake it, but it's just a bit of insurance, peace of mind. And last but not least, it would be great to have a nice thick pair of oven gloves, but you should be able to manage with the cloth. With all that out of the way, let's begin. We'll start by preheating the oven, 250 degrees Celsius, 480 Fahrenheit. While the oven is preheating, we'll scrub all the rust off and give the pan a good wash. And there's not much to it. All you need is a bit of elbow grease, a little bit of warm water, a few drops of dish soap, and a scrubber. And don't be gentle here. Give it all you got. Give it a good scraping. Scrape the whole surface, of course paying special attention to the rusty bits. And again, we're only scrubbing it hard because we are refinishing it. If you're just gonna wash it after cooking some steak, then a sponge and soapy water should do, most of the time. If it is a bit burnt, you can use the metal scourer, but whatever you do not put it in a dishwasher. That will most certainly ruin the surface. Okay, next step after washing, let's dry it off. you can see how dirty and brown the kitchen roll is getting. It will be like this no matter how much you wash it. Once we apply the first coat, this will stop happening. Now the kitchen roll is pretty good at drying the surface, but to get it super dry, place it in the oven just for 1 minute to dry it off. The high heat will flash off any moisture left on the surface. A minute is more than enough. The pan won't even heat up that much. You should be able to handle it with bare hands when you take it out of the oven the first time, but it will definitely get hotter from here. As you can see, the condition of my pan is not that bad, but if I tried to cook in it, food would definitely stick to it, and if I had left some moisture in there, it would certainly rust again. So we'll move on to applying the first coating of oil, and we do not need much at all. About a tablespoon of oil on each side will do. So pour it in there, take a piece of kitchen roll, pick up the oil and spread it all over the surface of the pan. Cover every millimeter of it. Take your time, don't rush, make sure you do it properly. Once you have finished one side, flip the pan over and repeat the same steps on the other side. Here you want to pay special attention to any grooves and any lettering, like the brand logo. Those are usually the spots that hang on to water and rust more. Don't worry about using a little bit more oil when you're coating the pan. You need to try and saturate the surface. And after you have done that, take a new piece of kitchen roll and dry it all off. Wipe both sides down so it doesn't have that wet look anymore. And that is it. We have applied the first coating of oil. Now we need to bake it onto the surface. Place the pan in the oven on a rack upside down close to the heating element and bake it for 1 hour. I could stop at this point because my pan was in a pretty good condition already. I wanted to make the seasoning extra thick, so I'm going to apply a couple more layers, and every subsequent layer is done exactly the same way. Coat the surface with oil, rub it dry and bake it for 1 hour. If your pan was super rusty, you may need to do 5, 6, 7 layers, but if it's not that bad, 2 or 3 will do. Just be extra careful when you're handling the hot pan. It's very easy to burn yourself, but there you have it. That's the finished product. It looks pretty decent to me, miles better than before, and of course I did the other side too. Now I'm just going to place this back into the oven and leave it to cool down completely. And your oven is definitely the best storage place for the pan. And that is all you need to know when it comes to seasoning. Remember, you don't need to do this all the time. A quick wash, a good dry, and a thin layer of oil will do. Store it in a dry place, use it as often as you can, and it will last you a lifetime, and even more. If you're into bread making, you should definitely own one of these pans with a lid. It is the next best thing to having a real bread oven. So what do you think of my method? And how do you take care of your pan? Which oil do you like to use? Let us know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.